Think about what you paid the last time you filled up your tank. Think about your electricity bill this month. Think about the Filipino relatives working in the Middle East right now, 2.5 million of them, and ask yourself, what does a presidential trip to Japan have to do with any of that? Everything. Absolutely everything. On May 26, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. boarded a plane to Tokyo 4 days. Closed-door meetings, agreements on paper, handshakes with emperors. And buried inside all of that ceremony and diplomatic language are decisions being made right now about missiles, intelligence, oil, and Taiwan that will shape the lives of ordinary Filipinos for a generation. This is not a feel-good diplomatic tour. This is the Philippines quietly, methodically, and very deliberately choosing a side. This is the first state visit by a Philippine president to Japan in 11 years. Not a working visit, not a sideline meeting at an ASEAN summit, a full formal state visit with all. The weight and intention that carries, the fact that it is happening now in the middle of a regional security crisis, a global oil shock, and a standoff with China in Philippine waters is not a coincidence. Marcos made the stakes clear before he even left Manila. I will be actively cultivating collaboration in priority areas that we have identified together, such as agriculture, energy, and decarbonization, maritime cooperation, now trade and investment, infrastructure, defense and security, space technology, and also the development of Mindanao, he said. Strip away the diplomatic packaging and one thread runs through all of it. China, the person sitting across the table from Marcos in Tokyo, is not just any prime minister. Sanane Takaichi, Japan's first female prime minister, who took office in October 2025 and won a historic two-thirds supermajority in a snap election in February 2026, has made security the defining mission of her government. Japan's defense budget has already high, 2% of GDP, a milestone originally set for 2027. She accelerated it. She lifted Japan's decades-old ban on exporting lethal weapons. She sent Japanese combat troops into Philippine war games for the first time since World War II. This is a leader who is done watching from the sidelines, and she found in Marcos a partner who feels exactly the same urgency. The two have now met 4 times since she took office. In remarks to Japanese media before his departure, Marcos described what the Philippines and Japan are both facing: coercive acts and gray zone tactics in regional waters, particularly in the South China Sea. That phrase, gray zone tactics, is diplomatic language for something very real. Water cannons aimed at Filipino fishermen, lasers pointed at Philippine Coast Guard crews, Chinese vessels swarming around reefs and shoals inside Philippine waters. None of it quite crosses the line into open war, but all of it is designed to push the Philippines out of its own sea inch by inch. Against that, Marcos pointed to the acquisition and cross-servicing agreement signed in January this year, a deal allowing Filipino and Japanese forces to share fuel, food, and medical supplies during joint operations. He said he wants stepped-up cooperation and assistance, especially in maintaining maritime order. That is the quiet language of military partnership being built piece by piece. And the Balakatan exercises this year showed just how far that partnership has already come. For the first time in history, Japan did not just observe, it deployed combat troops alongside American and Filipino forces. More than 17,000 troops participated in total, including approximately 1,400 Japanese personnel, alongside contingents from France, the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Japan's self-defense forces fired a Type 88 anti-ship missile from Philippine soil, pointing toward the South China Sea. These are not drills, they are a message. Now in Tokyo, Mark also is there to add more weight to that message, starting with what could be a historic arms deal. He confirmed before departure that the Philippines would discuss the potential import of Japanese military weapons and equipment, including aircraft, missiles, and radar systems. And after Japan spent decades legally barred from selling weapons abroad. That era is over. Reports indicate that Japan plans to export to the Philippines a command and control system for air defense operations, integrating radar and sensor data to track enemy aircraft and missiles. If it pushes through, it will be the first time Japan has ever exported a command and control system for military purposes. The first time ever. But the weapons deal is not even the most significant security development on the table in Tokyo. That distinction belongs to a proposed intelligence sharing agreement that has received almost no attention. Japan and the Philippines are set to formally launch negotiations on the General Security of Military Information Agreement, a GSOMIA. This would create the legal framework for both countries to exchange classified military intelligence in real time, including data from radar systems and surveillance platforms. It would be Japan's first such agreement with any Southeast Asian nation. And because the United States already holds GSOMIA agreements separately with both Japan and the Philippines, a Japan-Philippines deal would complete a triangle, establishing the foundation for genuine trilateral intelligence sharing between all three allies. That is not just deeper cooperation. That is the architecture of a functioning three-way security network aimed squarely at the South China Sea. The visit is also expected to formalize a diplomatic elevation, upgrading the Philippine-Japan relationship from a strengthened strategic partnership to a comprehensive strategic partnership, one step below a formal military alliance. The language matters if signals intent, raises the politic outcost of walking things back, and tells every capital in the region, including Beijing, where Manila has decided to stand. And then there is Taiwan. Before he left for Tokyo, Marcos made a statement that went far beyond the usual diplomatic caution. Aster could think in Japan's case it is more a matter of choice to be involved in any potential conflict over Taiwan. In the Philippines, we do not have a choice because Taiwan is so close to the Philippines, and we have almost 200,000 Filipino nationals living and working in Taiwan, he said. Geography, not politics, is Manila's exposure. The largest city in Taiwan sits roughly a 40-minute flight from northern Luzon. If a conflict erupts, the Philippines does not get to watch from a safe distance. The Philippine military has already begun drawing up contingency plans for the civilian evacuation of Filipinos in Taiwan. That is not the posture of a country that thinks the Taiwan question is someone else's problem. China, predictably, has pus. At back hard, Beijing's position is that this deepening Manila-Tokyo alliance amounts to encirclement, countries lining up against China under the cover of security cooperation. A Chinese expert warned that Marcos' repeated declarations of adherence to the One China principle are fundamentally contradictory to his actual actions. China's state media accused Manila of exploiting the Japan visit to push seabed claims near Taiwan. The foreign ministry urged the Philippines to match its words with deeds, and this tension is real. China is a massive trade partner. It is a neighbor that is not going anywhere. But Marcos has made a choice, and this visit is that choice made visible. Now, none of this reaches ordinary Filipinos unless the energy crisis gets solved. Before February 2026, the Philippines sourced almost all its oil from the Middle East. When conflict erupted involving Iran and the Strait of Hormuz closed, that dependence became a crisis overnight. Fuel prices jumped, electricity rates climbed, the cost of everything followed. In March 2026, Marcos and Takaichi held an emergency phone call specifically to coordinate on the Hormuz situation, proof that the oil shock had already pushed the two leaders into urgent real-time communication before this visit was even on the calendar. Now, in Tokyo, Marcos is pushing for the Philippines to tap into Pelware Asia, Japan's $10 billion regional energy fund launched in April 2026 to diversify oil supply and reduce Middle East dependence. That money, if it flows to the Philippines, would be felt at the fuel pump and on the monthly electricity bill. Japan is also putting money into the infrastructure Filipinos actually use every day. Loan agreements signed in March 2026 through the Japan International Cooperation Agency will finance the Metro Manila Subway Project Phase 1 and the Central Mindanao High Standard Highway, a subway for a capital that has waited decades for one, and a road that could unlock the economic potential of Mindanao. When Marcos lands back in Manila on May 29, the real test begins. Agreements on paper are only as good as the will to implement them. But the sheer accumulation of what is on the table, the arms deal, the GSOMIA, the strategic partnership upgrade, the energy framework, the infrastructure financing, makes this feel like a genuine inflection point, not just another round of diplomatic pleasantries. The Philippines is no longer a passive actor in this region. It is building alliances, signing defense pacts, hosting multinational exercises, sharing intelligence, and negotiating weapons purchases. That is a country that has decided it will not simply absorb pressure and hope for the best. it will push back with partners on every front available to it. But here is the question that lingers. Aligning this decisively, this publicly, and this fast does not come without consequences. Beijing has noticed, the region has noticed, and the millions of Filipinos whose lives depend on stable trade, affordable fuel, and safe passage for their relatives abroad deserve to know, does Manila have the resolve and the plan to see this through? That answer will not come from a state visit. It will come from everything that happens after one.